On Monday, a jury will take up the case of Sean Diddy Combs. The prosecution got the last word on Friday. They accused the defense of making excuses for the music mogul and blaming his victims. The closing defense argument was that the prosecution exaggerated its case against Combs with evidence of his swingers lifestyle and personal drug problems, but not a criminal enterprise. If convicted on all counts, Combs could face life in prison. Monique Pressley was with us when this trial started, and she is back with us now as it wraps up. She's an attorney, crisis manager, and host of Make It Make Sense with Monique Pressley. Good to have you this morning. Let's start here with this racketeering charge, arguably the most serious here. The defense attorney, Mark Agnifilo, highlighted to the jury that there were none of those high-ranking deputies. The inner circle called. We heard about the ex-chief of staff, but she was not called as a witness. Do you find that problematic, and do you believe that the prosecutors have made their case on racketeering?
No, I do not. I think that the racketeering charge was always the one that was the big stretch, something that we talked about before. And frankly, many of us who have been watching this case were waiting for the beef, waiting to figure out how you have a racketeering case when you don't have any conspirators who are charged. I have one then by the time the trial is ending where none of the people who would be considered co-conspirators have actually showed up in the courtroom, sat in a chair, sworn to tell the truth before a jury, and given testimony that would support that. And so it really just seems where the most serious of charges, and the one where prosecutors have the most discretion, is the one where it seems like they overcharged and basically reached for the moon and fell short.
So one of the prosecutors, let's just keep going down the list here of charges. One of the prosecutors, Christy Slavic, told the jury that they don't need to find that every freak off or every hotel night was an instance of sex trafficking. They just need to find one. And the defense says, well, how was Sean Combs supposed to know which one was sex trafficking? Is the prosecutor right here? And what do you make about this rebuttal from the defense that if they don't know that they were all sex trafficking, how is Combs supposed to know?
Well, and that's an obvious one, right? That I think the jury will understand once they're instructed on Monday morning. There still has to be intent. You've got to prove the mens rea, the specific intent to commit a crime. You can't just do a thing and not know that it is a crime and not mean to do it. And for this particular offense, have it be the case. Yes, the prosecution is right. You would need to see that it happened at least once, but it would have to be that it happened with intent and knowledge of the defendant. And it's going to be buttressed against the times when both parties would have to concede that the victims, in this case, the alleged victims, permitted certain actions, made certain choices, did certain things of their own volition, left and came back to do them again. And so the jury is going to have to balance that. Is that something that they would buy? That a person would 16 times intend to do a particular act, but then on one night, absent any proof of physical coercion, that one time was against their will. That's something that the jury is going to have to ferret and figure out.
The prostitution charges, the prosecutors put up this board. They showed 27 men that they say were engaged by Sean Diddy Combs. They only called two witnesses. Those two witnesses did not testify that they traveled across state lines, which would be the federal nexus. They say that they were not prostitutes. They were not paid for sex. However, there was sex, and afterward they were paid. Who has the stronger case on this? I mean, again, you remind us that the burden is on the prosecutor, but have they reached the threshold?
This is one, frankly, Victor, where I was surprised, and a couple of other people, legal scholars who I've been doing analysis with, were surprised because we thought that this was kind of the easiest of the charges from the beginning. We thought this was the slam dunk, but then when it came to the state having to actually put up the proof, and the two that they put on the stand, as you said, did not cross state lines, which is supposed to be required, and don't really have it locked in that even though there was payment, that the payment was by Mr. Combs, and that it was for the purposes of sex. This is to me where the prosecution still has the stronger case compared to the other charges, but as I said before, this is one of those weird niche times where a jury's going to do what they want to do. They're going to get those instructions. You hope that they're going to follow them to the letter because that's what makes the system work. But if they believe that they've seen enough for prostitution and buy the prosecution's argument on this, then I think that, compared to the other charges, is the one where we may expect to see a conviction.
Do you give predictions? Better
I
question,
give
will you give a prediction in this case?
I will say what should happen to me for sure is that there is a not guilty finding on the more serious offenses of racketeering. I think that there's been too much mud allowed in the water of other uncharged crimes for there to be a not guilty across the board. Mr. Combs' attorney was correct when he said that would be a courageous, bold thing to do. I'm not even certain, based on the evidence, having not been in the courtroom every day, whether that would be the right thing to do. But I am certain that this prosecution overplayed their hand, overcharged the case, talked about victims that never made it into the courtroom, talked about co-conspirators that never made it into the courtroom. And juries have good memories for that. If you overpromise, if you overcharge, if by the time they get the instructions, certain charges that they thought they were going to see aren't there, they start looking at the prosecution funny, not the defense.
All right, jury instructions on Monday and then deliberations right after. Monique Pressley, always good to have you. Thanks so much.